for you. Court 1, open roof at Wimbledon. The idea of performing under a roofless structure transports us about 3,500 years ago to the reign of Akhenaten. The opera is being depicted here. The real ruler Akhenaten had tried to establish a new religion, the worship of the sun Aten. He had constructed a new city, Akhetaten, where he had built a great temple. The temple was oriented on an east-west axis. It was open air and thereby had no roof, so the sun was worshipped by the people as it traveled across the sky from east to west. Archives reveal that many worshippers fainted in the heat. Hopefully that doesn't happen at the Wimbledon as well. So here's a relief depicting Akhenaten and Nefertiti with 3 of their daughters under the rays of Aten, which is the sun. It's quite evident. None of this remains, though. The people did not want monotheism, and eventually the temple and the city was sacked. In fact, his son did not want any association whatsoever with his father and chose to call himself Tutankhamun instead of what would have been Tutankhaten. That Aten suffix would have tied him up to his father, Akhenaten. So he severed every connection that he had. So Akhenaten's roofless temples could not protect him from the elements in any sense, especially politically. And that is the essence of today's presentation about roof, that it is meant to provide shelter in every sense, not just physical. A very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us for our 75th presentation. I am truly grateful for those who come, and I hope you find the time worthwhile because it's a pleasure to learn with you. The Nourishment Projects is about joyous curiosity and being part of something much larger than ourselves. Here are some of the references that inform this presentation. Roofs have inspired art. For example, the musical Fiddler on the Roof, which is really about maintaining balance in life. The sumptuous treat of this 1995 movie, The Horseman on the Roof, has Olivier Martinez and Juliette Binoche. And I must point out the recent movie by Juliette Binoche, The Taste of Things. She looks equally luminous. He, unfortunately, may not have aged as well. A Hollywood blockbuster, The Matrix, has crucial scenes on the roof where you have enemies dodging bullets, dodging enough bullets, but not all, because sometimes they did die. So, violence of another kind on the roof again in the movie, where one is being threatened to be murdered by the cop. This is the crucial scene in the movie Shawshank Redemption. And this scene takes place on the roof, where the character is trying to share with the cop how to avoid paying taxes. That's the movie, and much more about it. Another iconic scene with the roof in the movie is the original King Kong, the 1933 version, and the more recent one. All of this happened on the roof of the Empire State Building. Rooftop scenes are present in every Batman sequel, and there you see the Batman surveying his Gotham City. A classic, what I find wonderful, both play and movie, though the latter made some interesting edits that was not there in the play. Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, the cat being the character Maggie, and her husband is Brick. Here being played, Brick is played by Paul Newman. The broody, sulking look of that character reminded me of Daniel Craig's resting place, because he looks that sulky, brooding type as he plays James Bond. And I beseech you to look at the roofy background, because what exactly do you think he's going to do now? So there he is. That's him chasing villains. And he has an assistant waiting to help him. And so is she looking? Do you think that's the villain? No, the villain is smiley too much. That's actually a picture from Senator Jeff Flake's social media account. So Jeff Flake was a senator from Arizona. He's currently the US ambassador to Turkey. And he was having a bit of fun running Bond-like through old Istanbul, the Grand Bazaar roof. Now, that should not be a part of your travel itinerary anytime you visit Istanbul, because the authorities of the Grand Bazaar do not want hordes of tourists running through and ruining 100-year-old tiles that have existed quite well so far. So, what I wanted to share with you, look at the call sheet of the movie Skyfall. I'm going to zoom in and show you what I mean. This section, I marvel at the organization. It highlights to be careful and respectful of the culture. Look at the details they go into. I love that. I appreciate that deeply. Good. So from this rooftop view, I want to ask a question. Do you recognize what city has these roofs? Take a look. I'll give you a hint. This city is near this little hunting lodge. And it's also near, it's in that same city has this metal structure. You can guess by now what it is, Paris. So let's get a bird's eye view of this lovely city. Because I think changes in perspectives are always helpful. So if you look at it now, this blue structure I'm going to point. So there's the Eiffel Tower, almost the pivot points for recognition. Many of you will recognize the Centre Pompidou. It has works by had anyway. I had a display when I was there once or by Brancusi. But this 6-story, very large column-free space is the largest museum for modern art in Europe. And it also contains a vast library. But I'll bet very few people have seen its roof. Isn't that cool? Look more. Here's the ceiling of a Parisian landmark. You'll recognize it in a second. And here's the roof. Again, the perspectives to the safety bars on the roof is worth the climb up. Napoleon's tomb, because you can tell it by the golden dome, you can recognize it that way. But did you expect this? This is in Paris, inside the courtyards. How fun is this? Just look at all of them. Look at the difference. I just love that beguiling Paris reveals herself only to whomever she likes, those who live within her arms. Very selective. From outside these buildings, you cannot tell the insides of these lovely courtyards. And look at this art piece hanging. Imagine it hanging over your courtyard throughout. That is going to take us to get an overview of the airport in Paris, a bird's eye view of mechanical birds, so to speak. Now, view the roof of the train station. And until recently, no matter what roofs you've seen so far, this was one of the most recognizable roofs in the world. This is Paris, and the roof I'm talking about is right there. This roof caught everyone's attention, and rightfully so. The spire burned because the Notre Dame roof was made of wood, and the backstory of that lumber, it was like a forest up there. It was fabulous. Due to our time, we are not going to delve into it, but I highly recommend you look into it. Please look it up. You can search all this. Everything shown is online. It's easily accessible, and that's one of the hopes of doing all this. Everything went up in flames. And as before, because things like this has happened before, she will rise again because the reconstruction has already begun. See? That's so, I don't know, fulfilling. She'll be back. This is obviously what it was before. It's going to come back to look at this. Very similar. Because I really feel that the church has a very spiritual roof over its head, looking over it forever. Another church with a spectacular view. I think most of you can guess it. It's Milan's Duomo. And all these saints are keeping vigilance, and one truly hopes, showering blessings on the city. So I don't know if some of you have done it. I'm sure many of you have. The cathedral terraces are accessible. And next time you go, I recommend them. Go up there with a, I don't know, gelato in your hand, because they do provide fabulous views of the city. So if you look down, you may be expecting gargoyles in Egypt, in European churches, and not just the ones in Paris or Italy. But for this one at the Duomo, did you ever expect a boxer? I kid you not, this is there. The Italian heavyweight Primo Camera is depicted on this monument's falconry. And the builders have a divine sense of humor. Here's Dante Alighieri, but that's not the only joke that they have. They have a lovely sense of style. Look what we have here. Mussolini, the king, and a pope. It sounds like the opening of a joke. The builders truly were heavenly comedians. And though this one looks sufficiently self-important, he very well was worshipped, because this is Maestro Toscanini. One imagines him at the La Scala, but I guess people in Milan worshipped his style of conducting and very dutifully and correctly put him on their cathedral. We also have tennis. Look, Jack, it's for you. So this is a different kind of open air tennis than the opening style slide of Wimbledon. The Duomo terraces also lets one see the church's roof tiles up close. And sometimes, isn't it fun that the roof of a church is below your feet? Because you will have to walk down to enter the nave for Church of St. George in Ethiopia, Lalibela. The edifices in Petra, Jordan, were hewed into rocks. And there are many structures in Jordan like that. And what I liked is, why not? Here's a Bedouin man reclining on a rooftop carved in Petra about 2,000 years ago, relaxed, feeling like he's on top of the world, which good for him, but that technicality belongs right here in the Himalayan range. This is Everest, borderlines. You can see Nepal, China, parts of India. Again, it's a shift in the perspective, because a frozen roof can also be found below ground because it's capping you off. I'd feel very claustrophobic in these waters, because this is more of a watery rooftop for me. Hanging above the city, this is Singapore. That's a pool bar under the night sky. Imagine swimming laps there. I am hopefully going to be one of them very soon. The other one that I want to show you, there is the pool, and look at these hanging gardens. It's such a clever take on the hanging gardens of Babylon. Imagine the green roofs up on this structure.
Let me call you back.
Yes.
Okay.
The green roof in Singapore, and here is the green roof in our beloved city, Chicago. It's half of the city hall has a green roof. I hope some of you get to see it. And America, the diversity. Here's another kind of green roof, the type people in Manhattan prefer, as do the people, some people anyway, in Toronto. Look at what is a green roof in China. I think these are so clever, such good use of space. Here is one in Japan. And again, diversity that we should incorporate into our lives too. Look at this, homes on roofs in China. So an entirely separate living quarter on the top of the condo. For landlocked spaces, track and field on school roof. It's a perfect idea. Why shouldn't you exercise just because you don't have green space nearby? I want to ask you this. What movie would you like to see under a starry sky on a balmy summer evening? The night scene that is shown here is on a roof in Australia. And from night, Here is a typical dawn on roofs all over India. And I have to point, people sleeping on makeshift beds happens all the time. And it's really lovely, barring mosquitoes. But I firmly believe city mosquitoes are very thoughtful. They avoid the face. They will kill you everywhere else, but they leave the faces alone. This happens throughout cities in India. And in honesty, India views roofs very differently, especially for transportation. Roof of a bus, as far as the vast majority population of India, is often viewed as free seats, as are the roofs of trains. There are no safety protocols when you travel like this, barring a wish and a prayer that you don't fall. And if you do, oh well. While I was looking at this, I was just thinking, thank God these trains aren't the glass domed ones you see in Alaska and somewhere in Switzerland. Imagine the view for the passengers inside the train. Talk about bottoms up. India and roof has another sweet connection for me. Here's a typical California craft bungalow. The term bungalow comes from the British colonial times in India, specifically a region called Bengal. Military officers there were often housed in these easily constructed single-story huts, which they called bangla, meaning belonging to Bengal. So eventually, the term became bungalow, and the compact style home was brought to England and spread worldwide. Though these are not the same as the thatched homes at the English Cotswold, it's the same idea of thatched roofing. I'm from Bengal, and so I'm partial to the architecture. We call it Bagan Bari also, which means garden house. Ah, I love this. It's amazing. It's a marvel of a structure resembling an iceberg, which is so appropriate when there's opera houses in Norway. And look at it. Even non-opera lovers can enjoy the building, strolling on the roof while concerts are probably being performed below. What a marvelous communal approach to all buildings. Glass dome roof of Germany's parliamentary building. And this, look, an old and the new comes together. The dome uses glass and mirrors to reflect daylight deep into the main chamber, thereby reducing the dependence on artificial lighting. The dome also uses a funnel to divert and collect rainwater. So from government to a place where many leaders go for education. Cambridge in England, specifically King's College. King's College is renowned for its marvelous roofing structure. That roofing made a huge difference down the line on how you got to have glass panes. But that is not the focus for today because our focus is outside. So the perspective I want to share is to look up on the outside. Look, they've installed solar panels. I think that's fabulous, the best of the old and the new. So the quads in Cambridge aren't the only green thing at that university. Another green academic institution is the California Academy of Science, which is a renowned scientific and educational institution that attracts about 1.5 million visitors annually. Remarkable roofing to drive home the point about protecting the environment. Another remarkable structure nearby in San Francisco delivering that same message is Google's Bayview building. The firm says that the finished building will have 90,000 tiles to form what is effectively a solar skin roof, which its designer has named dragon scale because it looks like the scale of a dragon. And they estimate that this will generate about 7 megawatt power, or about 40% of the electricity needed for that campus. And the peaks of this building reminded me of what you just saw, another roof. These Himalayan roofs, however, need even more protection. They need to be even more carefully tended because the glacier melt flooding from these mountains can kill in devastating quantities. Even a more dangerous situation, lack of snow due to climate, will create water shortage, which will lead to political warfare in volatile India, Pakistan, and China. This roof needs and provides shelter in unimaginable ways to many, many countries, because the waters trickle down all the way to Vietnam, Cambodia, all of that, it goes down. Among the countries, obviously, is India, and one recognizable roof from India. It doesn't even need a name. You can see her rising above the mists, looming ghostly against a gray rust-colored sky. And when dawn's rosy light steals around the exquisite curve of the dome and lights up each arch recess, this marvel against a mauve backdrop, this spirit building is mirrored in the still water there. One thing, I don't know if you remember from the Islamic garden presentation, you can age an Islamic garden by the size of these rills. The bigger it gets, the more modern it is, because the original rills were very, very, very thin. And there she is, stone and marble, the Taj Mahal, exquisitely feminine. The entire concept, every detail, expresses the intention of the designer, which was a tribute to the womanhood of the Empress Mumtaz Mahal. This structure is her mausoleum. So Mumtaz Mahal's aunt, Noor Jahan, was a de facto ruler of India during her marriage to Jahangir, who would have been Mumtaz Mahal's father-in-law, because Jahangir was the father of Shah Jahan, the man who was married to Mumtaz Mahal and built Taj Mahal for her. Noor Jahan, not so readily known outside, is a marvel. And she had commissioned many gardens and structures, including the mausoleum for her husband Jahangir, which this tomb rests in Lahore, Pakistan. So when it was built, Pakistan was part of what is now known as India, because Pakistan was part of India until the mid-20th century. What I want to point out is, notice the lack of a dome on this mausoleum. In one generation, the roof completely changed. Whether for the better or the worse is up to you aesthetically. But look, marvel at the idea that she had. The domeless roof exposed the cenotaph to the heavens. Noor Jahan designed roof models. If you look here, the star and the sun motif, which is so recognizable in Islam. So effectively, the roof mirrors the heaven. That woman was a wonder. Look at the mausoleum, the difference between this and what you see in the Taj Mahal, the one without the dome, which is now going to follow. Because she commissioned other mausoleums, including this one for her father. This one is called Itimat-ud-Dawla, and this mausoleum, which you can now somewhat recognize, is the precursor to that world-famous garden mausoleum, the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal was built for Noor Jahan's niece, Mumtaz Mahal, by her stepson, Shah Jahan. But look, the roof is revealing history silently. Look at the changes. The previous structure would not have had any of this. The cenotaph would have just been on the flat roof, exposed to the heavens directly. Why am I showing you this? Because this applies elsewhere. Roofs communicate things that are important to notice. For example, take New Mexico. Originally colonized by Spain, the land that is now New Mexico became a US territory following treaties signed with Mexico in 1848 and 1853. The territory did not become a US state until 1912. With that in mind, keep in mind what is happening on land. Hispanic cultural perspectives of common land came into conflict with US practices. The Tierra Amarilla land grant in northern Mexico, and so all this area and southern Colorado, has remained a bone of contention, legal disputes and protests for more than 100 years. So this man, Senator Catron, was a member of the Santa Fe ring of prominent attorneys, politicians, and land speculators. He used his knowledge of New Mexico's Spanish and Mexican land grants to acquire lands from Hispanic settlers who were unfamiliar with both Anglo laws and the English language. These Hispanic settlers were often not even aware that the ownership of the land where they lived was being challenged. For our framework today, we're going to focus on the roof and look what is revealed simply by the roofs. Look, this is what it starts. So this is Amaria. This is the courthouse that still remains now. But look at the roof of the original structure and look over time what it's becoming. From a flat roofed one story, a likely one room structure, to ones with dormers. Actually, look what architecture is revealing. The individuality is being revealed by the individual rooms, among other things. Whereas the communality that was prevalent in the Hispanic culture that was there, because this is being influenced. You see, when you get money, you get a bit richer. The settlers changed their approach to how they wanted to live. And so, from easily identifiable Spanish style to the proverbial Western model of structures. And we're not spending time on this now, but the Mormon influence in these areas architecturally is evidenced in the placement of the dormers, how evenly they were spaced, because sometimes people put just dormers up. The Mormon influence shows up in architecture as well, in the roofs. Roofs give so much. So look at this versus this. So these dormers versus these, and look at the original structure. Look how much a roof reveals. Obviously, you can tell I'm rushing through these things because there's a much larger story I hope to communicate. Roofs, again, are an entirely different subject matter in the East. Buddhist and Shinto influence on structural design is one of the most remarkable details of Japanese architecture. Wide overhanging eaves are indispensable to prevent sunshine from penetrating into the room during summer. But look what happens for the same structure during winter. This projection of the roof and eaves does not prevent the sunshine from entering and warming the room, because the sun travels low throughout the mainland of Japan during winter season. How brilliantly designed. The roof is the most visually impressive part of a Buddhist temple and often constitutes half the size of the entire edifice. You have seen many Buddhist structures, and I didn't want to spend time, but you can get the main message I want to convey. The eaves have a very practical function in Japan and many of these countries where rain is a common event. And so they protect the building by carrying the rain as far as possible away from the walls. The roof's weight has been supported by complex bracket systems called tokyo. And the farther the eaves extend, the greater and more complex the tokyo, the brackets. An added benefit to the tokyo system is its inherent elasticity. These are not nailed in, by the way. And this elasticity lessens the impact of an earthquake by acting as a shock absorber. There are so many things that will just entrance you the more you look into this stuff. But look at this one. Here is a singular roof in Japan. So you're now looking at it, at the roof itself. And I'm not talking just about this. This is the Miho Museum near Kyoto. It appears like a fairy tale, again, like Taj Mahal out of the mist. It is accessible, let me get into it, by a suspension bridge. And one encounters sakura, cherry blossoms, when approaching the museum. And the shape is very reminiscent of a traditional Japanese temple. And while you're stepping through these doors, the silhouette of that tree in the back graces you. And at dusk, the silhouette mirrors the painting upon which this setting, this entire architectural setting had been based. That tree, its angle, its relationship with the viewer is due as much to civil engineering and architecture as to nature itself to achieve that exquisitely singular perspective. It's angled by design. But what's even more impressive is that the entire mountainside was removed for the construction of this museum. The construction went on for about 5 years, and then the museum was poured back over the mountain. Ecology was replanted at the end. So it's truly a green environmental structure where nature was replaced almost exactly as it had been once. And so you see, this mountain is the roof of the building. Nature is the architect, working on people's understanding that beauty exalts the spirit. I just had to make sure you knew of this roof. That is the entire roof of the Miho Museum. Isn't it something? So roofs are very symbolic throughout Southeast Asia. I'm just showing Thailand, for example, and the variety is stunning. This was, visually a touch much for me, but it is spiritually resonant because all those mirrored borders, because it's all mirrored on the side, symbolize self-reflection. Look at this one. I bet you didn't expect this one. Isn't that a sense of fun? It's so cool how they design structure. For geographical diversity, however, we will now go to the continent of South America, to Chile. The essence of the Baha'i religion, which is one of the youngest religions in the world, is that the ideal of universal worship for men, children, women of any creed, that they can gather together as equals, a deep sense of equality. So the architectural pilgrimage for that spiritual contemplation is captured in the shape of a temple resembling, look at this, a 9-petaled blossom of the sacred flower of yoga, the lotus. So look at the roof of the temple. You sit here pooled in serenity, effectively bathed in peace. How could you feel anything else with that light streaming in? Without any ritual or clergy, sans any icons or images. The temple, conceived as a 9-sided structure with 9 entrances, literally and symbolically is open to people of all faiths. Distilled to its essence and communicating again through the roofing itself, the building seeks to come alive to the embodied light that you see there from inside and when the light shines on it. So the temple, like each of us, is an interplay of contradictions, seeming contradictions, isn't it? There is stillness and movement because the petals look like it's going to burst open. There's simplicity and complexity, intimacy because it's like so private, but the monument is huge, so it's immense, its immensity. Why did I show you that and go back to the East? Because the essences are the same. The similar spiritual sheltering is found in central Java structure, the world's largest Buddhist temple, Borobudur. It features nearly 3,000 bas relief sculptures, 72 lattice stupas. And stupas are these conical hemispherical structures, and they were first constructed in ancient India, and they symbolize the sacred mountains that are sacred to Hinduism and then, of course, Buddhism. So the temple structure, especially from the overhead angle, is based on a mandala, which is a geometrical, often circular configuration of a spiritual journey. The center of the mandala is the mystical Mount Meru, where the gods of Hinduism and Buddhism reside. So this geometrical design and architectural plan of the building is what is depicted inside sand mandalas. And from the time of his existence, which was nearly 600 BCE, which is before current era, the Buddha wasn't usually depicted in human form. He was represented by a raised relief of his footmark. And again, it was not an indentation. It would have to be a relief because a relief indicates that he is no longer present, because an indentation indicates that he's on this ground, whereas he's no longer present. So the raised relief structure of the footprint itself indicates an ascension, the enlightenment, that the Buddha's present is not here. We each aspire to become one. A central tenet of Buddhism is impermanence, I should say. So permanent Buddhist temples, though they are visually resting, seem very questionable to me. Architecturally, and this is simply my ardent belief, that these sand mandalas represent the earth, the ever-changing, impermanent colors of this eternal circular mandala, our planet Earth. Verdant green transforms into carmine fall, and every color in between through the flowers, there's your sky, the sea, bathed in golden light. That to me is the actual mandala, and nature is central to the Buddha narrative. And that is what nature is going to bring us to the most meaningful roof I have the privilege to share with you. And for that, we go to Croatia and incorporate the annual migration of white storks from southern Africa to Croatia, traveling a distance of nearly 8,700 miles. The most perilous part of the journey isn't fatigue, hunger, or inclement weather. It is hunters in Lebanon who shoot them down almost for sport. And so one injured female stork who had been able to make her way to Croatia was taken care of by this man who nursed her, sheltered her in his garage in the winter, and built for her a nest on his roof. Look at that. They shared their home together for 8 years. Look at them. They took car rides together like one takes a puppy. And he named her Malena because it means the little one. And then one day, a male stork landed on his roof, and Malena and the second stork, which was named Kleptan, became a pair. They raised a family together, a much larger brood. And because Kleptan wasn't injured, he made the annual migration back to Africa. And over time, his return became an event anticipated by millions in Croatia. And his return was live streamed. And so when he did return, that homecoming became a communal joy. Storks live for about 35 years, and Milena died of old age in 2021. That man, Stefan Vocic, had taken care of her for 28 years. Her nesting on his roof, home in each other, sheltering one other, is the essence of roofing, the essence of love.